Dr. Sophie-Lee Williams is a raptor biologist, the founder of Eagle Reintroduction Wales, and the white-tailed sea eagle project officer for Wales. She works on reintroducing both species of native eagle, the golden and the white-tailed sea eagle. Her and her team are working on restoring the small population of white-tailed sea eagles to southeast Wales. Sophie-Lee is best placed for this work because as a youngster she gained invaluable experience both with wild raptors and those in captivity, working with trained falconry birds, rehabilitating free-roaming raptors, and also observing healthy wild populations and taking field notes. Sophie-Lee received her zoology degree from Cardiff University after excelling in raptor and owl biology project design. She progressed to a Masters of Research and was mentored for working on large raptors, ospreys and satellite-tagged golden eagles in Scotland. Completing this work, she felt saddened that she had not had the opportunity to work on such big birds as a youngster in Wales. So she returned to Wales to begin a feasibility study on the reintroduction of both golden and white-tailed sea eagles to Wales. She submitted this proposal to the Welsh Government for funding, and this morphed into a scholarship for a PhD in Cardiff. After that, she was taken on by Durrell as its project officer for the white-tailed sea eagle reintroduction, where she remains to this day. White-tailed sea eagles evolved 10 million years ago. Golden eagles 36 million years ago. Working with eagles and living the wildlife looks like this. Sophie-Lee, what jobs are there with eagles in the UK?
For example, your main job that comes to mind is conservation and ecology. So those are your jobs like Raptor ecologist, Raptor biologist, field ornithologist, wildlife rangers and wardens. So if you're interested in, for example, monitoring, research and protection of birds of prey, then those are the jobs for you. But also there's other sectors like falconry and wildlife rehabilitation that I started in. So if you are more of a person which wants a hands-on approach with captive raptors or wild birds, then those roles are really rewarding. I started out in falconry. These types of jobs are growing. So now that white-tailed eagles or raptors are obviously populations are growing across the UK, there are more job opportunities. So education and ecotourist roles. So, for example, if you're not really into research, protection, and monitoring, you can actually go into the education sector and teach people about these birds and, take groups out and, really connect with nature. And also, if you are more kind of policy and legislation job roles like conservation policy officer, I can imagine being really rewarding. So
What do you do?
I am the founder of Eagle Reintroduction Wales. I'm heading up the restoration of white-tailed eagles to Wales. We've also got ongoing research with golden eagles. So basically, Eagle Reintroduction Wales is looking at both our native eagles returning to Wales. So at the moment, I'm currently working for a conservation company called Darrow Wildlife Conservation Trust, and I am the White-tailed Eagle Project Officer for Wales. So we are working towards restoring a small population of white-tailed eagles in southeast Wales and the Severn Estuary. It's been 9 years in the making, and we're doing this in partnership with Gwent Wildlife Trust and WWT, which is the Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust.
How did your career develop, please?
Because of my interest in birds of prey, I started out in the falconry sector, and I also dabbled in a bit of bird of prey rehabilitation as well. So I think I started that when I was 15 years. So I've been 18 years, obviously, with birds of prey now. But I really enjoyed the captive element. But as a young girl, I was more intrigued about working with wild birds of prey. Um, on top of my volunteering with an owl sanctuary that was quite close to home as a young girl, I went into a zoology degree, and that really helped me piece together really what I wanted to do, with wild birds research, everything just clicked. So I done a 4-year zoology degree with Cardiff University, where we were allowed to design our own programs or research projects. And that was really the first sense of what my job or what my research career would look like. So for my zoology degree, I was literally designing projects. After my zoology degree, I was lucky enough to go into a master's of research. See, I'm passionate about designing projects around birds of prey. My master's of research was a year research program designed by myself. So I went up to Scotland for a year, and I worked with golden satellite tag golden eagles. And I think that's really when my eagle career started. So this was back in 2016. That experience in Scotland made me reflect on my childhood. And I honestly felt a bit deprived and sad, sad the fact that I wasn't experiencing those types of birds in Wales. So when I finished my master's and come back to Wales, I designed a feasibility study to look into whether it was feasible to restore our native eagle species, so both golden and whitetails. It took me probably about 4 months to design that project. We then put in funding to a Welsh government to see if they were interested, and I managed to get a scholarship under a PhD. So then that's basically how Eagle Reintroduction Wales started. So yeah, it was basically from 2017 to 2021 that we run the research. And towards the end of my PhD, we published it online. And, long story short, it is feasible to restore both of these species. Whitetails are more compatible than golden eagles. So that really set the premise of conservation work for eagles in Wales. So we're starting with whitetails first. So hence then I got obviously offered a job with Darrell Wildlife. So that's basically my career in a nutshell.
Fantastic. For somebody who 10 years from now wants to be you, do they need a degree? If so, is a bachelor's sufficient, or do they need to go master's, then PhD?
Yes and no, really, depending what sector you want to be in.
Sophie-Lee, what skills do you need to assess feasibility of reintroduction of what conservationist biologists call flagship species, the two native eagles?
Good understanding of the species and biology and ecology that you're, the species that you're working with. So, for me in particular, these skills kind of helped us build up the scientific evidence about, habitat availability here in Wales, what prey they could potentially take, population modeling, genetics, and disease ecology. So if you've got a really good understanding the environment that you're working in, but also the geographic location, it's really good to have a good understanding of that. In the case of whitetails, it's been really handy to have a good understanding of conservation law and policy, skills with communities and stakeholders, so that social side of things, that would help you then deal with or understand where the support, concerns, and potential conflicts lie. Project management and being able to collaborate with people.
With early career professionals coming into this, raptor biology, raptor conservation, what skills do you find that they need to work on?
the ability to identify our UK birds of prey. And I think that is very common.
What are the protocols involved in setting up a reintroduction once the initial paperwork has been completed? How are the eagles acquired, moved, acclimated, and released?
When you have all of your research and all of your kind of licenses in place, your main priority is to get everything set up ready for these birds to come in. Our main priority is to set up the release aviaries. So with white-tailed eagles, or for many birds of prey, we use something that's called a soft hack approach, which is basically really slowly allowing the species to adapt in the new environment before release. So it's really important, to make sure that you've got the release site set up, so that would be probably our next kind of main concentration now that we have our license. Make sure that we've got release site set up. So when the release site is set up, our work is always limited by the biology of white-tailed eagles. We'll be collecting our birds from Norway, and they usually breed between March, April, and then we go out and get chicks from nest sites in mid-June. So when our release sites are all prepped, we'll then go out to Norway. We'll and all of our Norwegian team are volunteers. So they've got a really good understanding of where the breeding eagles are, what nests are productive. So they've basically done all of the work for us before we go out for collection. So in mid-June, we then go out to collect the birds. They're usually about 6 to 7 weeks of age when we collect them. And that's simply, because they are at full skeletal capacity. From an egg to 7 weeks, they are fully grown, which is an amazing thing to think about. So we get them, they're fully grown, they can thermoregulate themselves, and they can eat big chunks of food at that age. So we know that they are hardy enough to sustain the translocation. So we literally collect all of our eagles from the nest. We then transport them to the UK, or to Wales in our case, and then they go into the artificial aviaries or the quarantine pens for about 4 weeks. And that's then when I said about the soft hack approach. So we put them into broods of 2 or 3 to mimic natural brood size, because we can't really get all of our eagles from the same nest. We can only take one from each nest, and if there's only one in the nest, we're not able to collect it. So there are rules and regulations that we have to play. But when they come over, they're put in artificial aviaries. They then spend 4 weeks in those aviaries imprinting on their new landscape. And then at their natural age of fledging, which is about 11 to 13 weeks, we release or open the doors of those aviaries, and then they can fledge from those artificial nests. But the week before we release the birds, we fit GPS satellite tags and also BTO rings to all of the birds to help us track their real-time movement and to help us understand how they're learning their new landscape. But also to tackle misconceptions and conflicts as well.
Mm-hmm. Which brings me beautifully onto one of the next questions, which was, in your work, do you have to deal with any popular misconceptions?
Yes, I think there's 3 main misconceptions with white-tailed seagulls, and particularly with our social work here in Wales. I often say there's 3 main frequent concerns, and that is really correlated or driven by the lack of understanding towards the behavior of white-tailed eagles. And white-tailed eagles, don't forget, are our UK largest bird of prey. So many people misconceive really and correlate the size with problems or the capabilities of the bird. So they always say that, basically, this we're releasing this fire-breathing dragon that's going to decimate everything, but it really isn't that case at all. So the main three misconceptions are, so your first being white-tailed eagles having an impact on children and pets. That comes up so often. But white-tailed eagles are more scared of humans than vice versa. There has been no evidence across Europe actually of pets or children being harmed by white-tailed eagles. So we always say that no, there is no impact to children and pets. The second being, for example, white-tailed eagles having an impact on protected species. But again, obviously, we've really delved into the science around white-tailed eagles' interaction with protected species. And across Europe, there is no evidence of them having a detrimental impact. And that's simply because white-tailed eagle's main ecological role is to take the more seasonal, abundant prey. So if you think of a predator-prey relationship, if a predator is coming across something more common, it's more likely to learn to hunt that. Whereas a protected species, they're often in low population numbers, so the interaction would be much lower. So that's basically how we've built up the science. But leaning on European evidence. So we don't believe that they'll have an impact on protected species. If anything, they'd have a positive influence on aquatic food webs. So by taking seasonally abundant species, they're able to reduce competition and create space for protected species. So yeah, it's amazing looking into all of this research. So ecological risk is our second most common concern. But I think our most frequent concern is white-tailed eagles having an impact on livestock. So when we say livestock, people automatically think sheep farmers, but our livestock stakeholders are much larger than that. So we work closely with sheep farmers. We also work closely with poultry and wildfowl farmers, gaming estates, and stocked lakes as well. So a very broad stakeholder group there. But obviously the main concern is how often white-tailed eagles would they predate on livestock, how often, and would they have an impact? And again, like I said, from European evidence, that is the species white-tailed eagles are not your true typical eagles. They're mostly closely related to red kites. They're huge scavengers, and from GPS kind of satellite, GPS satellite tags, they don't spend a lot of time around farms. So all in all, very low to no socioeconomic impacts on livestock farms.
Sophie-Lee, where do our knowledge gaps lie with wild UK eagle management?
Population connectivity and genetics. In Cardiff University, we have ongoing research looking at the genetic diversity of our UK population, but also the European population as well. So Norway has got great diversity, but there are populations across Europe which carry higher diversity. So we feel to inform further UK white-tailed eagle work, it would be really beneficial to start diversifying the source populations. Your second knowledge gap is causes of mortality. So right across Europe, one of your biggest mortality causes for white-tailed seagulls are poisoning incidents or collisions with hazardous obstacles. With GPS tagging all of our birds, but also keeping a close eye on how these white-tailed eagles interact with these certain anthropogenic land uses, so that we can obviously hyper focus on campaigns of changing or mitigating some or reducing potential conflicts around these areas really, and that's not just for whitetails, but that's for other wildlife as well. And then your third knowledge gap is probably public perception and human dimensions. So what I mean by that is the perception of the public towards the bird. So their attitudes, their perceptions.
Can you please suggest a research topic for a student?
Yes. And I mean, I would have loved to watch something like this when I was like setting out my early career. Is the movement ecology and habitat use of reintroduced or, like I said, other birds of prey and their implications on, for landscape scale conservation and conflict mitigation. And that would be absolutely amazing to look into habitat preference, selection, avoidance, how those land uses correlate with preference selection and avoidance. I mean, what an amazing research project.
Can you suggest some essential reading, and are there conferences that students should be attending?
Your local Raptor group conferences, RSPB, now we've got a Raptor group in Wales. Reading material, I'm obviously going to promote Eagle Reintroduction Wales research, so have a look on our website, but also the Isle of Wight project. So the Isle of Wight project at the moment, the White-tailed Eagle program, is doing some amazing work, and you can follow all of the eagles with, and their GPS tag.
Sophie-Lee, thank you so much.